Welcome back, everybody. This week on Young Bucks, we'll discuss what retailers are doing to engage millennials, including teaching them how to use tape measures. We'll call out ESPN for teasing University of Washington coach Chris Peterson, and also we'll discuss AIG's $3 billion loss after potentially the worst hurricane season of all time. Thanks for joining us.
This is Young Bucks, and this is What the Buck. This is the only show you will see on YouTube television where we actually guarantee you that our opinions will be sometimes flat out wrong. Joining me today for his opinions is Sam Frost. How are you doing?
Doing good.
And Matthew Krebsbach. And both of these fellows are off to Boston at the end of this week, and they're going for the weekend as well for some conference, some poker perhaps, and some blackjack, and some channel checks at various retailers. So let's just jump right into it. Walmart came out with some big news on Tuesday morning, and they came out with their guidance for next year. So this is when a company issues what they expect to earn in the subsequent year. And you might say, well, that's a very difficult thing to do, but in a business as large as Walmart's, it actually doesn't generally vary that much. The stock market seemed to like it. Stock went up significantly, even though the stock has risen a large amount so far this year. And the thinking right now is that Walmart is Amazon proof, which means that it can compete with Amazon and still have an ability to compete and to win in an increasingly online world. So I guess the first question to you, Sam, is do you agree? Is Walmart Amazon proof?
So I think they're just competing head on, Amazon and Walmart. And I think if anybody's Amazon just keeps, crushing company after company, and I think Walmart is the one who can compete with them head on. I think the thing is you got Amazon who started off like entirely online. Now you see them trying to, they bought Whole Foods. They're trying to find distribution centers and places so they can build their brick and mortars. And then you have Walmart doing the complete opposite, where they have the brick and mortar done. They're trying to get online. And truthfully, I think Walmart is ahead of Amazon in terms of getting, as far as they are in getting online versus Amazon getting into the brick and mortar. And so I think Walmart can compete with them head on. Obviously, Amazon will cause struggles at time, but I think Walmart can compete.
What do you think, Matt?
I mean, it's clear not going to be a winner-take-all market. That market's enormous, especially when you include like the grocery that Walmart's big in, and now Amazon's getting into. Like, there's so much money at play. It seems obvious that Walmart can compete. I mean, when they're forecasting top-line growth on as big as a company that it is and as huge as that revenue base is, growth of 3%, which is really impressive. But that comes at the expense of significant investments in the distribution and the online presence and all that type of stuff. And I think, Ben, you talked about this internally here. Their earnings growth it's shrinking because of the margins are getting pressured, but it's just they're not getting pressured as much as you and I thought previously. Because you and me haven't been the biggest Walmart fans, but I mean they've shown that they can handle it pretty easily.
Yeah, not the biggest fans to our detriment, full disclosure. But yes, exactly what Matt was saying is that despite Walmart forecasting 3% sales growth, some of that's coming from new stores, which is a large majority is international. So when you talk about Walmart, you're talking really about the international as a source for growth. It's not so much the domestic market. So that's number one. Number two is that the earnings growth is not as robust as you would like. The earnings per share is expected to grow 5%, but 4 points of that is coming from share buybacks, which means that Walmart is buying back stock, and that will, because you have a smaller denominator, your numerator is going to look larger in comparison. So your earnings per share is going to go up. And that's helping to the tune of 4 points, which means you now have another point from sales, but that leaves another 2 points that implied is margin compression. So watch out for the margins at Walmart. They may be Amazon proof, but prices are coming down. they are seeing that pricing pressure from Amazon. So they're having difficulty there. Other news that came out on Tuesday morning was that AIG came out with a $2.9 billion catastrophic loss. That's going to get a lot of headlines, but Matt, does that actually mean anything? We knew these hurricanes had happened. We knew that AIG was going to take a loss on it. Is $2.9 billion surprising given the damage that occurred?
I do not think so. I mean, I think you have to consider that hurricane season, or the current hurricane season, has to be the worst in U.S. history. Not just the like cumulatively, it has to be damage wise. AIG has a fair amount of exposure in Florida. I mean, they hit the brunt of that with Irma. I think Morgan Stanley estimated before AIG came out that they estimated 2.5 billion, and like you said, it was 2.9 to 3.1 for all that stuff combined. So, and when AIG reports those earnings, that just comes down to a hit to book value, and I think that hit to book value is about 2%, 2.5%, which, that's not a whole lot, all things considered, in my opinion. Especially when it's trading so far below book value. I don't want to get too far into AIG, but to me, it's a one-off event. I think there could be more catastrophic losses because of the wildfires that have been pretty drastic in California these days. But in terms of the hurricanes, I think that was pretty expected.
Yeah, I agree. That's a huge number, 2.9 billion, and that does, I think, create a bunch of headline risk. But then, like Matt was talking about, that's just a 2% hit to book. Like, that's not, for AIG and a company of their size, it's not like that big of a deal.
Now, for the millennials out there, there's obviously a lot of talk about climate change and this becoming the new normal. Do you think, Matt, that there's a problem with AIG's underwriting, that they underwrite too aggressively, which means that these catastrophic losses will happen more often than they have in the past, and AIG isn't prepared for that? Would you agree with that or disagree?
I mean, in terms of cat losses, I don't agree with that. I think that's just the nature of the business. I think, I mean, that's the bear argument of AIG and why it's trading so depressed, is that they're just not good at underwriting just general policies. And my counter to that would be that that's going to change going forward, just because, they have a completely new management team with arguably the best management team in the industry. They just lost their sci-fi designation, so there should be significant tailwinds to AIG going forward.
You'd have to imagine that they have just some of the best actuaries and mathematicians working on, when I was in undergrad, we talked about like predicting weather patterns, or not weather patterns, but predicting catastrophic weather events. And it was like incredibly difficult, but like that's something that's like big in the field of math. And so you'd have to imagine that they got like some of the best out there working on this, and that it's very mathematical. I guess where the management could be struggling is if they just flat out said like, hey, go against your mathematical or statistical decision.
I mean, that's basically what you've seen in the past, where they've had to redo their reserves to like billions of dollars every quarter, every year, just because they undercut their policies just to like boost the top line or the current period, performance. But then like 2 years later, 3 years later, you have to recoup it because you're undercutting all that stuff. You're not making enough money.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2.9 billion, just to summarize, sounds like a lot. Probably not a big impact. Watch for it going forward, and watch for the new management team and how their underwriting progresses.
I think that's reflected. One more thing that's reflected in the fact that the stock didn't move that day. The next day it was flat. I mean, it opened, pre-market was down 2%, and then ended flat. So,
right. All right. Something that I predict probably even worse than the weather is college football currently. I had a terrible week. I went 0-5. I'm hoping for a little redemption this week. Zombie Andrew looks like he's number one, even though he's not present today. So, Krebs, you want to lead off on where we stand now?
Yeah, so Andrew is in first place along with myself. I forgot that part, at 17 and 10. Ben and Garrett are 16 and 11, and Sam's bringing up through at 14 and 13.
Woof.
So I don't know
I'm
what's
over
up with
500 though. Over 500.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
First,
I'm making money right now.
Not including the fees and everything. First game, Wisconsin 16.5 point favorite at home against Purdue. Wisconsin covered last week against Nebraska. I think that was a harder game than what this will be. Purdue's like one of their decent games remaining, but they're still not good. Like, it's the Big Ten's division, or the Wisconsin division is so bad, so I'm taking Wisconsin to cover that one.
I think the Big Ten division, I'll put on my Andrew hat right now, is just bad in general. And so I think Wisconsin is part of that club, and I think that it'll probably be about a 15-0 game. Wisconsin will win, but they won't cover the spread.
I got Wisconsin.
Andrew also has Wisconsin. Georgia, 31-point favorite at home against Missouri. I don't have analysis on that one.
I think that Georgia's been looking really good. The thing that I really like about them is that they have a really diversified offense, and their defense is just stout. So I actually picked Georgia to cover the spread on that one.
This is a big game for Mizzou. And so I went with Mizzou. I don't have much more analysis. I do think Georgia's really good, but that's a large spread.
I took Georgia, and Andrew took Missouri, so we're 2-2 in that one. Washington 17.5-point favorite at Arizona State in the desert.
Man, we've been bad in the desert. We haven't won in Arizona at Arizona State for 16 years. And I don't even know if we beat Arizona State last year, but that was at home. I think this is going to be a lot more difficult. Their quarterback's actually playing a lot better this year. He's thrown 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Our offense has struggled a little bit to get things going. Our defense has been incredible, but I think this could be a really messy game. It starts at 10:45 on the East Coast, so no one's going to be watching it. And I actually have Arizona State. I hope Washington will pull it out, but I'm nervous about this one.
So Ben has been calling that Washington will lose to Arizona State since last year for this game. And so I'm buying in. I got Arizona State.
I don't know. There's something about the desert that teams do not play well there. But, I mean, I still took Washington.
There we go.
Andrew took Washington as well. Alabama, 30-point favorite at home against Arkansas.
You know, I feel like every year Alabama plays Arkansas, it's either just like it shouldn't be a close game, and it is a close game, or Alabama just walks all over them. And I feel like it's never just it's never like, oh, Alabama won by 20 points or something like that. And so really, I actually think this is a coin flip. I went with Arkansas.
Arkansas is one of those teams that they play like dump, and then there's always that one game against one game a year against a good team that they just play out of their minds, and like they lose by like 3, or like final play they lose.
Yeah.
I still took Alabama. I'm not confident on that one at all, like you said.
I'm with Krebs on this one. I have Alabama.
And Andrew has Alabama as well. Bonus game this week, it was Ben's pick, and he took Stanford. The game is Stanford against Oregon. Stanford is a 10.5-point favorite at home against Oregon.
Just for clarification, Oregon is Oregon.
Yeah.
So I have, I'll tell you a little bit about this. Stanford and USC really get the positive press. Actually, Washington State's been getting a little positive press as well. Oregon's actually played pretty well. Their quarterback, Herbert, is really solid, but he's going to be out. I think is the word. He had an issue with a collarbone. So watch out for that. It's going to be a duel of running backs. I think Oregon's defense is definitely suspect, but their offense is still very strong. And I think Stanford's just going to struggle to move the ball. And I think if Oregon can stop Bryce Love, not only can they make sure that Stanford doesn't cover the spread, but I think Oregon can actually pull off the upset.
I got Oregon as well.
I have Oregon as well, and so does Andrew.
Oh boy.
So we'll all go down together. That's it for Young Bucks. Stay tuned for the rest of the show. Thanks. Hey everybody, welcome to Get Tanked. Today we're talking about millennials. Surprise, surprise. We talked a little bit about a Wells Fargo survey last week, so be sure to check that out. This week we're actually talking about a big article that was in the Wall Street Journal that basically went around to a lot of these consumer stocks like Procter & Gamble, like Home Depot, and said, okay, what are you guys doing to attract millennials to your business? And the answer was quite humbling from one millennial to another,
to say the least.
and essentially they came out and said, we're doing things because millennials don't have any idea of what they're actually doing. We have lessons on how to use a tape measure. We have we do hardwood floors and Swiffer because millennials don't want to spend the time to actually get out a mop and a bucket. And so there's a lot of things like that. Millennials are finally moving out of the home. They're going to start buying houses now. And so now they actually need to do home improvement, and they have no idea how to do it. So Scotty, our resident expert in tape measures and all things home improvement, what have you to say on this?
So one, I think it's really interesting. They also talked about having services, how millennials are a lot more likely to pay people to come out and like hang things on their walls, which is like hilarious to me. Because it's the easiest thing. It's got to be the easiest home improvement task, period, is like hanging something on your wall. And I think it was Home Depot, I'll have to check that, that I think came out and said, like, yeah, they teach that in classes right now. How to find a stud, where to hang things on the wall. And you don't even need that kind of thing. We have the Hercules hook. Like, all you do is stick that thing in the wall where you want it, and all of a sudden you're hanging a picture there. But millennials are totally incapable. And the fact, I think... whoever it was that was putting on the class in the tape measuring, they came out and they were afraid to put that class out initially. They were afraid to offer it because they thought that it was going to be insulting, because they imagined the millennials would come out and be like, well, like, we don't need to learn how to use a tape measure. Like, we're not going to pay for that. But they weren't. Millennials weren't insulted, and they paid to learn how to use a tape measure, which is astounding to me. I guess I don't see where the disconnect is there. So
yeah, I mean, I've definitely, those tacky substance that you put on the walls to hang pictures or whatever.
Yeah.
That's supposed to keep them on the walls and not like ruin it. And they always seem to fall off for me.
Yeah,
like,
or they bleed through
yeah.
the picture or the poster that you're hanging.
I always
you
I'll
gotta be
just
careful with those.
randomly, like 6 months later, I'll just hear this enormous crash, and it'll be something just falling down and breaking, and the frame breaking. So does this reflect badly on millennials and say, these guys are so incompetent, they can't do anything for themselves? We're actually having to teach them these basic life skills that their parents knew before they could walk.
Yeah. So I think there's a plus side and a downside here. Obviously, everyone should know how to use a tape measure. It's hilarious to me there are people out there that don't understand how to use a tape measure. Like, I can't even comprehend that. I think you should be able to hang something on your wall yourself. I think it shows a lot of character when you take a painting off of someone's wall, and like, everybody's got this in their house. Well, I guess except for millennials, but everybody else has in their house. You pull back a painting and you see like 8 different holes in that wall where they had to move it over just a little, they had to move it over a little bit more. They had to test it out. They had to figure out where was the right spot. And you don't see that anymore nowadays. Millennials are apparently paying people to come in and hang things for them. And I think on a broader scale with bigger projects, I think that could ultimately benefit millennials. I think most millennials can probably think of an example of a time when, you were at home and your dad started on a little project at the house being like, our hot water heater's making a little bit more noise than I feel like it should. Like, I'm going to investigate myself instead of calling a plumber because I don't want to waste that money. And then 3 months later, your dad has put a solid 200 hours into that hot water heater, and he's stubborn and refuses to call a plumber to come out and take a look at it because he wants to fix it himself. Now, there I think it becomes an issue because you're wasting your time. When you could just call somebody else, you got to value your time at a certain amount and say, hey, this is where I draw the line. Now, I think millennials take that to the extreme, paying people to come out to your house and to, paint for you and to hang things on the walls for you and to show you how to use a tape measure is amazing to me. Like, that is the kind of thing that people should be able to handle themselves. But at the same time, I think millennials also probably save a little bit of their time in the long run because they're willing to admit, hey, like, I don't know as much as a plumber does. And they're a lot more likely to call a contractor out and just say, hey, you just do it. Just handle it. So,
yeah, and as the incompetent millennial in this segment, I mean, we've had conversations about this. I mean, I'm potentially looking to purchase a property, and I don't want to purchase a property where I actually have to do a lot of maintenance. I don't want to have to really like make sure that the grass grows and stuff. Like, there are other things that I want to be spending my time on because it is a lot of work, and you almost don't want to even have to deal with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's an increasing trend. What are some of the investment implications of this? So if you think about it, like who stands to benefit as a company and who stands to lose as a result?
Sure. So in my opinion, I think this could hit hardware stores pretty bad. In my experience, just going through college, in the past 4 years, I've lived in multiple houses with different guys. And a lot of those houses, just college students all cramming into a house together. No reason to laugh, Ben. And at every house, I've got a big rolling toolbox, and I have a very wide assortment of tools that I've amassed over the years. Some were given to me, and then others I've bought for specific projects. But I like to think I have a pretty comprehensive toolbox. It's about chest high, pretty wide. It's nice. And I love it, and I take a lot of pride in it. My tools are organized in there. In every house I've ever lived in, I'm the one with the toolbox. And constantly my roommates come up to me. They don't even have hammers, not even like a basic toolbox for themselves. They come up and they say, hey, I need a hammer. I'm trying to hang something in my room. I'm like, you don't have a hammer? Who doesn't have a hammer? And I think that's an issue that millennials are facing now. They don't realize they've been living with their parents for so long, and they just take advantage of their dad's tools. And they leave the house and they don't have their own toolboxes. And maybe right now it's easier to just, and a little cheaper to just call somebody to hang that painting for you, because you don't have a drill, and it'd be more expensive to buy a drill than to pay someone to hang the painting. But in the long run, you're losing out. You should just buy the drill now and learn how to do these, basic home improvement things, and they benefit you in the long run. But I think millennials they value their time too much. They don't want to go looking for a drill. It's just a lot easier to call somebody out to do it.
So if hardware stores stand to lose,
mm-hmm.
Who stands to benefit in your opinion?
So I think a lot of small business, blue collar workers, looking at my houses whenever things would go wrong, millennials are definitely passionate about small business. I don't know if a lot of millennials really know what that means, but they all want to be, they want everything to be locally sourced and whatever. And I think they take a little bit of pride in giving work to local people. I think they're definitely to gain. I think millennials are also a lot less likely to call somebody out and actually investigate their price quote. In my experience, millennials just want to deal with somebody as little as possible and get jobs done very quickly. Whereas, when your dad eventually calls a plumber out to the house, he's going to get that quote. Then he's going to say, all right, I'll get back with you. He's not going to have him do the repair that same day. And then he's going to call another plumber, and that guy's going to come out, and he's going to put them against each other and end up saving a lot of money doing that. I think millennials just aren't likely to do that. I think they're a lot less likely to call back if something goes wrong later. I just think ultimately they're non-confrontational, and I think that benefits blue-collar workers big time. I think the plumbers, the electricians, millennials don't even want to try to learn, so they'll have a bunch of T-ball jobs, if you will, just coming out, and when someone's like, hey, I want you to replace this light and put a fan up, that's a piece of cake for an electrician.
Man, I'm thinking of all these new applications for Uber. You can have the electrician Uber. You can have
absolutely.
You can have the mobile mechanic Uber. You can just do Uber everything, and I guess they kind of have that already with like the Angie's List thing, but whether or not that actually reaches scale, I think is probably going to be the big question going forward.
Yeah, and Uber's got the speed too, and that's another thing millennials love is they want things fixed now. They want to call somebody out and have it repaired today. They don't want to have to be there while they do the repair. They just want it done, and we've gotten used to it with things like Venmo is a great example. We're used to just being able to just transfer things over like that. You press one button and it's done. Uber, you order a ride, you press one button and it's done. I think when somebody grows into this contracting space when you can call a plumber out to your house with a touch of a button with technology that everybody's got on their phones, those guys stand to gain from this big time. Because millennials, they don't want the face-to-face interaction. They just want whatever's broken to be fixed without them having to give it a second thought, and they want it fixed quickly. So as soon as some electrician, plumber, decide to band together and develop some kind of app like that, like you said, the Uber for home repair, mobile mechanics are becoming really popular right now.
So I guess the real takeaway from this is when those apps actually come out and you hire Scotty to hang some pictures or show you how to use a tape measure, then just move that compost bucket and move that recycling bin so that Scotty can bring in his 10-foot high toolbox.
That's right.
And 50 hammers. So stay tuned. Thank you. Hi, welcome to the Call Out. Have you ever seen the movie Talladega Nights when the main character, Ricky Bobby, crashes his NASCAR into the wall at Talladega? He is proceeded to be pulled out of the vehicle. He then proceeds to run around, convinced he is on fire, and this scene progresses for about 2 minutes before he's finally quelled and contained.
This makes us all realize the kind of pressure these drivers are under.
This type of overreaction, unfortunately, is actually very common right now. We see it especially in the media, and we see it when the media overreacts to circumstances which don't really need to be reacted to in that way. Take, for instance, the reaction ESPN had to Washington, the University of Washington, when Chris Peterson, the University of Washington football coach, said that it's tough on the fans when every game starts at 7:45 p.m. This means the games don't finish till 11 p.m. and the fans might have a difficult time getting home because they're very tired, especially for the older populations or for children. 11:30 at night is extremely late for a lot of young people or very old people. ESPN then proceeded to respond to that, firstly by commenting that UW should actually be thanking ESPN for ESPN actually showing its games and giving the school more exposure. Secondly, ESPN then to continue to progress the issue. They brought out cupcakes onto the field, saying these are the teams that UW has played so far this season. They also proceeded to call the Washington coach, Chris Peterson, cantankerous and irascible, words I'm convinced that they found on powerthesaurus.com. And all the while there's this undertone that UW is actually getting wealthier as a result of ESPN. Bear in mind, ESPN is not a charity. ESPN is owned by Disney, and they exist to make money. They would not have bought the rights for Pac-12 games if they did not want to make money off of it. So, in a way, ESPN should actually be thanking UW for doing a deal that allows ESPN to show the games. This is not a one-way street. Neither party is benefiting unfairly, and each should just work together and move on and come to a conclusion about when the game should be played. Follow the money. The second issue is true when media outlets overreact to certain politicians when they make a statement. The more you blow the statement out of proportion, the more it just looks bad and has a bad reflection on the media outlet itself. For example, in this ESPN example, when ESPN responds to a simple comment for a week, it reflects badly on ESPN, and ESPN looks defensive, they look petty, and they look weak. I mean, it's not a good look for ESPN. What you should react to is something where, especially from a purely financial perspective, is a time when there's a significant financial consequence. For example, Fox now has every right to complain to the U.S. Men's Soccer Federation that the United States national team did not get into the World Cup. I mean, it was an embarrassment how poorly the United States men's national team did in the soccer match against Trinidad and Tobago on Tuesday night. They lost by 2-1 and have now not made it to the World Cup for the first time since 1986. This will have significant financial consequences because there will be significantly less revenue and less interest in the World Cup as a result. There'll still be interest, but Fox has a legitimate gripe now because the bill of goods that they thought they were buying turn out to be something materially different. So keep in mind what is actually material. Keep in mind what is not material. Keep in mind what is germane. Keep in mind what is not relevant at all, what's petty, and then make conclusions from there. But to overreact to minor circumstances, minor statements, just reflects badly on you.
Tusk Media is a subsidiary of Narwhal Capital Management. Ratings and reviews of Tusk Media content are not to be construed as endorsements of opinions, analysis, or services offered by Tusk or its parent company. The opinions and predictions shared here are professional beliefs at the time of publication. We are not under duress from any of the corporate entities mentioned. This is not a solicitation to take any particular action. Although we are investment advisors, this information should not be considered investment, legal, or tax advice. We strive to be as impartial, insightful, and accurate as possible. We base our opinions, analysis, and calculations on information we believe to be reliable, but we cannot guarantee its accuracy. We can, however, guarantee that our opinions will sometimes be flat out wrong due to a variety of factors. Employees and clients of Narwhal Capital Management may or may not hold positions in the securities detailed and may or may not hold these positions in the future. A full list of all securities purchased, sold, or held during the 12 months preceding the date of this publication can be provided upon request. Unless otherwise noted, all data accessed via MarketWatch or the Bloomberg terminal. Past performance does not guarantee future results. A copy of Narwhal's Form ADV is available at the SEC's website, www.advisorinfo.sec.gov, or from Narwhal upon written request.